right, now it is time for the top five segment, man. And man, with it being Oscar season, getting ready for the big show, the big ceremony, this week's top five is top five films that won the Oscar for Best Picture. Some of our favorites, man. And I mean, some of these on here I hold near and dear to my heart because I have specific memories with those films. And yeah, I mean, it really makes you go back and look at everything, right?
Without doubt. And it's so funny because when I was looking at our lists, there were multiple on yours that I had on mine. And I'm like, okay, let me swap back and forth because there were so many that I agree with on you. There's not a single one on these 10 that I don't agree with. They're all there's reasons why they all fucking won Best Picture. Put it that way. They're all fucking amazing.
Exactly, exactly. Well, my number five goes to Green Book. Of course, everybody compares it to Driving Miss Daisy with Morgan Freeman, but I love this film specifically because obviously driving through the South and with the company and you and I both being very imprinted in the South, right? The South, the Southern culture and the New Orleans culture has very much played a big part into both of our lives. So to have that kind of be a little bit of a character of its own, and then to just learn more. We talk about all the time how the best form of our best form of education is through entertainment,
Right.
and that's what I learned through this film. There really was a green book for African American people that they could see where they were allowed to stay, where they were allowed to eat, where they were allowed to go during this specific time. I don't remember if it was the 50s or 60s that it was set in. I'm sure, but it was one of those things where, it was a learning experience and to be able to shed light on situations that are still happening today. And I really put it on my list because this was the first, I believe this was the first year that I started religiously watching the Oscars. Like I always caught clips here or there, but this specific year when Green Book won Best Picture, I think that was the first year we ever did an Oscar watch party. That was the
Yep.
first year I watched the ceremony all the way through. So specifically that one, that's near and dear to my heart because that started a whole new journey in my life. So yeah, number five for me, Green Book.
Well, I agree with everything you just said. Spending the majority of my life in the Louisiana area, Louisiana, South Mississippi, etc. It's certainly that movie was about. And look, Usher just brought it up in his little pre-interview before the Super Bowl. He was talking about he went to one of the hotels that was in the original Green Book where performers were allowed to perform in the casinos but not allowed to stay there, and they had to go. That's what the Green Book was, guys. Is like Logan said, it was a book that basically told African American people where it was safe for them to stay in areas of the country. And listen, being in that area and spending a lot of time in the area in the South, I can tell you, unfortunately, there are still areas like that where if you're the wrong color, it's not necessarily safe for you to be in. We're still
Right.
there in 2024. We're still there. And that's pretty sad. But the history of the Green Book and what it meant and how it was, it's a must-see film. And obviously, Vigo and Marcella are like,
Oh yeah.
man, phenomenal performances by both. It's just it's unbelievable good film. I'm so glad you had it on the list. My number five goes back to a film that we talk about regularly because as filmmakers, you can't not talk about this one. And again, it's another learning history through entertainment. It's about World War II. It's about invasion. It's about what happens in France and saving people and where do you go and how do you do. I'm talking about, of course, Casablanca. It's one of the best films of all time. It's a no-brainer that it won Best Picture at its time because it's one of the best films of all time. So, but it's another perfect instance of a film that makes you look at things from a different perspective. What was the Nazi point of view? What was going on with the French point of view? How were outsiders dealing with it? Where do you set aside love and just focus on war, or is love still relevant? Is it still important? Where do you all these things? I love movies that make you look at things from a different set of eyes and go, oh, you know what? Maybe there was this. Maybe there was that I didn't really see when I'm coming at it like this and only looking at it. And Casablanca is one of those movies for me. It makes you look at a very dark, dreary situation in a different way. And we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on our show. If you can take a movie that's a love story set during World War II. It's a love story set during a war, a nasty war with a lot of nasty stuff. So anytime that you can effectively do that, I think you're a worthy film of Best Picture. So Casablanca, my number 5.
Ah, so good. Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Like the best classic that there is out there.
I mean, come on,
It's so
Bergman,
good,
no
so
relation.
good. No relation.
Damn, I wish
No
she
relation.
was.
One
I
in,
wish she
not
was.
two.
That's
Yeah.
Damn.
That's so funny. Number 4 for me goes to The Hurt Locker. Man, oh man. Jeremy Renner in this thing, I mean, really showed you what it was like to be a person who adapts to soldier culture, I guess you could say, to where, you feel more at home when you're at war than you do when you're actually at home. The one scene that always specifically comes to mind when I think about this film is when he's standing in the middle of the supermarket looking at cereal and he's like, what the hell am I doing here?
Yep.
Like I could be protecting lives. I could be doing this. And then of course, you deal with all of the PTSD symptoms where, you're an average day Joe basically going through life and you still are thinking about what's happening overseas, what's happening in Afghanistan. So I mean, that film, I mean, it definitely sheds the light on, what our soldiers go through every single day when they come home. And even after that, 50 years after that, we have so many veterans now that still experience PTSD, fireworks, car explosions. I'm sure that rarely ever happens, but still, you know what I'm trying to say. It's just one of those things where, not enough people think about this type of stuff. Like a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the soldiers coming into the restaurant,
Right.
and I was thinking about, how many of them were going to make it out alive, that type of thing.
Yep.
And I feel like Hurt Locker does an amazing job at that. And I always love to get it completely away from like the deep hardcore stuff about, war films. But I always love to when you have a war film that focuses on a different specialty in the war, right? Because he was I don't even know the specific term for it, but he was a person who defused bombs. And like he wore this huge suit like to protect him as much as possible. But it's always interesting to get to learn about those different type of things. But I love The Hurt Locker because that was honestly one of the first ever Best Pictures that I had ever watched in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's special to me as well. I would think I watched that when I was probably like 10 or 11. Probably not when I was supposed to be watching it, but it happens. It happens. But number 4 for me, The Hurt Locker, Jeremy Renner.
There you go. I'm sure Jeremy appreciates the shout out of how old he is too.
Yeah, for sure.
My number 4, speaking of a guy wearing a suit, Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Now, we talked about this earlier in the show with Alejandro getting Keaton his Oscar for Best Actor. This film, though, it's I think a lot of people look at it and they tag it very generically as a guy that was typecast as a superhero, and this is not that. This is a stark, dark, harsh look at mental health. This is a man struggling with mental health and deteriorating rapidly. And did he being typecast and not being able to get out of that and being stuck, did that lead to it? Did it bring it to the forefront? Did it do, like, look at it however you want to about what the typecasting as Birdman played in the life of this character. But what it is a look at the journey of mental health that this man was on. And it is told brilliantly through Michael Keaton. It's it comes off as one continuous shot for the entire length of the film. That was done with some trickery. It was actually 4, 5, 6 different shots put together. But it comes across as Michael Keaton seamlessly walking through the entire film in one seamless shot. And so cinematography wise, writing wise, directing wise, acting wise, everything. But when you are able to tell the story so prevalently and get, I can't even speak right now, a look at mental health and get people talking about mental health. It's so important. It is so important. And this goes back to what we reiterate every week on this show and ties into our other show about mental health and everything's okay. The best way to discuss these subjects is through art, through entertainment. And this film did a brilliant job of that. And I just want to get Michael Keaton, Emma Stone, Edward Norton. Come on. I mean, can you even get a better cast? A phenomenal cast. But if you are looking for a deep, dark story that just takes you inside a man's head and his thought process and how he's trying to deal with life and all the shit that's been thrown at him, this is it. This is the movie you want to sit down and watch because it does it brilliantly. Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. My number 4. Fucking phenomenal film. Have you watched that one yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's so good, right? Like,
Yeah, so good. So good. My number 3 is last year's winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think this one specifically was so impactful to me because it was so different in the time of where the entertainment industry was in a rut and still kind of is. But I mean, this film was something so special to where you were able to think about all these different things. And it was like a live action anime, basically, because I
good
mean,
description.
the characters they brought to life and the different scenarios that you go through when, time traveling or alternate reality traveling, like different universes of just being the same you. But yeah, I mean, definitely a conversation starter. And I mean, that as filmmakers, that's what we want to do. Michelle Yeoh did an amazing job. And then, at the end of the day, it's all about having a relationship with the people around you that you sometimes take for granted. And I think that's something that this film shows beautifully. And I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she killed it. I love that she got an Oscar for it. And Key, our boy Key from Goonies and Loki and fucking like
Indiana
I just
Jones. Yeah.
Indiana Jones. I was trying to think of that one with Brendan Fraser. But yeah, it was an amazing film that definitely was so outside of the box that everyone enjoyed. So I love that. So yeah, number 3 for me, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, there you go. I agree with everything. My number 3, I'm not even going to say a whole lot about because we've talked about it relentlessly and we know what I think about it. But I will say this. My number 3 is The Godfather. And the reason I put this on the list, a couple of reasons. One, because like I said about Casablanca, it's one of the greatest films ever made. So it was a no-brainer that it goes on the list of Oscar winners for Best Picture. But it does another brilliant job of, like I said with Casablanca, forcing you to look at things from a different perspective. You felt empathy. You felt compassion for the mob, for the mafia, because it's being told from their point of view of what their life was like and what their day-to-day routine and how they were trying to save who they are and where they come from. And unfortunately, this is the way it was done, and this is how it gets. So any movie that makes you look at something differently from a different point of view and maybe have some compassion for people that you don't normally think of wanting to feel sorry for or having compassion for. This movie does it brilliantly. And remember, when you're watching the story about the making of this, it was one of the conditions is to never refer to them as the mafia. You weren't allowed to refer to them as the mafia in the script. That was one of the conditions from the mafia towards Paramount for making it. Don't call us that. But I think it's a brilliant way to just use art to open eyes and have a different perspective. Because what these people did, while horrible in many instances, was just their way of life. It's it's who they were. It's where they came from. It's how they operated. And in their eyes, family first and surviving and do it. So I don't know, breaking rules, breaking laws, yeah, but you felt empathy and compassion, and that's all I'm going to say. That's why I love this movie. It just, again, opens your eyes and forces you to look at things differently. So I love that.
Yes, yes. Be sure to check out The Offer. That's what he was
Yes, The
referring
Offer.
to.
Oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh.
so good. Paramount Plus, Miles Teller, so many others in
Oh,
that freaking amazing film or
Matthew
amazing
Good.
show.
Oh,
Yeah,
he stole the
amazing
movie
show.
the series in my opinion. Hey, baby, come on, baby, come on.
Yeah,
I just
it
he is
was
so
so
good,
good.
fucking so good. I just say yeah.
Uh,
I want to go back and watch that again. Fuck,
I know,
so
me
good.
too, me too. Number two for both of us goes to Coda. We talked
Yes.
about this, I believe, last week, because I think I had it on my films that I think would turn into classics.
Mm-hmm.
This was something that I felt like was so, it wasn't groundbreaking, but I felt like it was so touching. Because it can't you come as an outsider and as an outside perspective into this family and into this situation to where like, you always have, those scenarios as a parent, I'm sure, and specifically as a sibling for me, where I'm like, I hope my sibling doesn't have any dysmorphoses, I guess you could say, or like anything that sets them back, or you don't you want them to have the best possible life that they can. But with this girl being born into a deaf family and she's the only one that can hear, she becomes their saving grace, their shining light, to where they rely on her so much to where it holds her back. So it's kind of like a flip scenario type of thing. But Coda, I mean, it's one of those that it makes you think and it makes you like happy for the ones you have and
Right.
your health and your prosperity. It's a beautiful film.
Well, and it does again it makes you look at it from a different point. It's so many times I think so often that we look at families that have a disability or some sort of impairment or whatever, and we always look at it from their point of view. Oh, it must be so hard being deaf, or it must be so hard being blind, or it must be so hard being an amputee or whatever. We never look at it from the point of view of the people that are having to be in that world and deal with
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. And this film does a brilliant job of flipping the narrative. It's like, hey, what about me? My life is fucking hard too, dealing with this and kind of a thing. So it did just such an amazing job, but it did it in such an empathetic way that you didn't at any point feel like the deaf family was the bad guys. You just understood also the pain and the struggle that the hearing was going through with that. I just thought it was a brilliant way to, again, just flip the narrative, look at things differently, and come at it with a different point of view. And it fucking brilliant job. Yeah, number
Completely
two.
agree. And I mean, it's also historic because it was the first streaming film that won Best Picture.
Yep,
So Apple, man, killing it. Like we said, they don't have a lot of stuff, but they got that quality. That's for
for
sure.
sure.
Oh man. But number one, I've talked about so freaking much, so I won't, like you with your number three, I won't say much about it. But The Departed, it's kind of in the same eyes as The Godfather. The Departed is so good because obviously it has an amazing cast, has a great story of being involved with your surroundings or trying to get out of your surroundings. And it's one of those situations to where, I felt like somebody connected with something in that film. Everybody connected with a little piece of something in that film because you have somebody in your life who you're like, man, I hope they stay on the straight and narrow. Or you have somebody that you're like, I'm so glad they got out of that situation or
Yeah.
doing better. Like, it's all of these different things. So I think Martin Scorsese did an amazing job, put together an amazing cast. But yeah, number one for me, The Departed. I've probably talked about it so much, I'm surprised I'm not blue in the face, to be honest. So there we go. There we go.
That is hilarious. And again, though, it goes back to what I was saying is that this is their life.
Yeah.
So many times when you come up in an Italian family and you're coming from this type of a background, you have two routes. You're going the bad guy route with you're going to become part of the mob and organized crime, or you're going, I'm going to be a cop and I'm going to take down my other family members. And there's no other choice for you. This is your life and you have to pick the path. And I think that it does a great job of showing the realities of that type of a life and that type of a family and that type of an upbringing. Good choice. Good choice. Okay. I am going with my number one and I want to make sure I get names right here because it's absolutely critical that I don't want to get these people's names wrong. My number one, I put this on the list at number one because I think it is a phenomenal job of brilliant storytelling in a way that was so original and so just I can't even describe it. My number one is The Artist. And if you haven't seen The Artist, this is a film about the demise of, the ending to, the silent film era. And it's a silent film. It's a modern day film that's a silent film about the demise of the silent film era. And for me, that was groundbreaking. That is fucking brilliant. Whoever's sitting in the room going, hey, how can we tell the story about the end of the silent film era and moving into talkies? Let's make a silent film. What? I mean, it's so fucking brilliant. You would think, no way. Nobody in the modern day is going to sit in a theater and watch a silent film. It's just, it's unheard of. It's like, no, we got rid of talkies for a reason. I mean, silent films for a reason. We came into talkies because people wanted to hear. And yet, this film, fucking brilliant. It's a silent film about the demise. And I just, Jean Dujardin, I can't even say their names. I'm butchering them. I'm so bad. Beriancy Bejo, John Goodman, James Cromwell, Penelope Ann Miller, Missy Pyle, just the entire cast. And there's literally only, if I'm not mistaken, 1 or 2 lines of dialogue in the entire film, and it's at the very end. John Goodman delivers one of them. But it's just, for me, I could not think of it. It's shot in black and white. It's just, it's a brilliant way to tell a story about a story. And I just, this one's on my list strictly as a filmmaker, loving an innovative, creative way to tell a story. That's why it's my number one. If you want to know how the silent film industry or era ended, watch this silent film. It's fucking brilliant. You'll be glad you did. I'm just telling you, you'll be so fucking glad you did. It's such a fucking awesome movie. I still, every now and then, just go back and watch it because I'm so engulfed with it. I'm just like, this is fucking brilliant.
I love that. I love that. Well, all good choices. All good choices. Please let us know what your favorite Oscar Best Picture winner is.
Yeah.
Please be sure to leave a comment below in the YouTube comment section. Add us on X or Threads and all the good things. We love the fan interaction. We love knowing different people's opinions. It's always very fun.
We do.
Always very fun.